In the depths of space, the galaxy had long known peace, a peace forged over countless centuries. Through delicate alliances and shared resources, the various species of the stars had learned to coexist, each with its own unique abilities and culture, but all bound by a single truth that survival depended on unity. The Great Galactic Council had been formed to maintain this balance, and every species adhered to the sacred laws that governed interstellar relations for millennia. No one questioned the way things were. No one ever dared challenge the order of the cosmos, except for one newly emerged species from a distant planet known as Earth. At first, the humans were seen as nothing more than a curious oddity. Their planet was a blip in the vastness of space, and their technology was far from advanced compared to the great civilizations of the galaxy. Their ships were crude, their weapons primitive, their culture still recovering from centuries of war and violence. But there was something in the humans that the galaxy could not ignore. It was not their technology, nor their numbers. It was something far deeper, something more primal, a hunger to survive against all odds. The humans had not been peaceful. They had fought their way out of their own turbulent history, pushing their species to the brink and beyond. Yet each time they fell, they rose again, stronger and more determined. The Galactic Council initially dismissed them as a fleeting curiosity, a species destined to be absorbed into the greater whole of the galaxy, just another footnote in the grand story of the stars. But they underestimated the human spirit. They underestimated the sheer will that burned within every human heart. When the humans first ventured into space, they did so with an optimism that was both infectious and naive. They sought to explore and learn from the galaxy, eager to meet new species and discover new worlds. But the galaxy was not kind to them. They quickly found themselves face to face with creatures whose history stretched back eons, older civilizations that had long since lost their need for exploration or wonder, but rather thrived on power and domination. And so the humans learned that space was not the serene place they had imagined, but a vast and dangerous expanse, filled with deadly predators and ancient forces that cared little for the survival of newcomers. Yet instead of retreating or cowering, the humans did something no one expected. They fought back. They fought with every ounce of strength and every bit of cunning they could muster. They threw themselves into conflict with a ferocity that caught even the oldest and most advanced species off guard. The humans had a resilience unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They did not accept defeat. They did not bow to power. Instead, they found ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. They adapted to the dangers of space with terrifying speed. Their warships, though primitive compared to the more advanced fleets of the galaxy, were imbued with the spirit of their creators. They fought not just with weapons, but with a burning desire to protect their own, to claim their place in the stars. They would not be pushed aside. They would not be erased. They would rise again and again and again. In the quiet reaches of space, the galaxy began to stir, and for the first time in millennia, the great powers began to feel a flicker of uncertainty. A new force was rising, and the other species could only watch as humanity made its first steps into the unknown. The first true test of human resolve came sooner than anyone expected when the humans encountered the Vorelians, a species long feared across the stars for their brutal efficiency and their unwavering expansionist policies. The Vorelians had conquered countless worlds and bent entire star systems to their will. Their fleets were massive and their weapons devastating. They did not negotiate. They took and destroyed anything in their path. When the humans made contact with the Vorelians, it was not a peaceful exchange. It was a clash that neither side was prepared for. The humans had ventured into a sector of space that the Vorelians had marked as their own, and the first contact was a disaster. The humans attempted to communicate and trade, but their methods were unfamiliar to the Vorelians, who saw their presence as an intrusion rather than an opportunity. When the humans tried to negotiate, the Vorelians responded with threats and force. Without hesitation, the Vorelians sent their warships to eliminate the human fleet and secure their claim. The humans were caught off guard, but they did not panic. They did not retreat. Instead, they did what they had always done. They fought back with everything they had. Their fleet was small, but they had ingenuity on their side. While the Vorelians relied on their overwhelming firepower, the humans relied on their ability to adapt and think outside the box. The humans fought in ways The Vorelians could not anticipate using unconventional tactics that played to their strengths. They had learned the harsh lessons of their own planet's history, where survival had often meant outsmarting stronger foes, and now they were applying that same mentality to space warfare. In the first few engagements, the Vorelians were confident that they could crush the humans with ease. They underestimated the human spirit and the resourcefulness that burned inside every soldier, every pilot, and every engineer in the human fleet. The humans used hit-and-run tactics, exploiting the weaknesses in the Vorelian ships with precision strikes aimed at their power cores and weapon systems. They disabled enemy ships with calculated risks and brute force, showing the Vorelians that the humans could not be so easily defeated. The battle raged for weeks, with both sides suffering heavy losses, but as time went on, the Vorelians began to realize that they could not simply overpower the humans. The humans refused to break. They adapted to every new strategy the Vorelians employed and began to turn the tide in their favor. The Vorelians were used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers and superior firepower, but the humans refused to play by the rules. They were not predictable. They were not easy to defeat. At the same time, the humans were learning about their enemies as much as they were learning about themselves. They studied Vorelian tactics and ship designs. They reversed engineered their technology and adapted it to their own needs. Humans were not just fighters, they were problem solvers. They found ways to turn the tide of battle by applying their unique perspective to the challenges they faced. And then came the turning point. The humans discovered a weakness in the Vorelian fleet that no one else had noticed. It was subtle, hidden deep within the design of their ships. But the humans saw it, they exploited it, and for the first time the Vorelians found themselves on the defensive. They could not comprehend how a seemingly insignificant species from a backwater planet could have outsmarted them in their own territory, and they were forced to reconsider their entire approach. The humans had made their mark, and the galaxy would never be the same again. For the first time, the great powers of the galaxy were forced to recognize that these deadly humans were not just an anomaly, they were a force to be reckoned with. The victory over the Vorelians was a shockwave that rippled through the galaxy in ways no one had anticipated. The humans had not only survived, but had turned a brutal conflict into a resounding triumph, and the implications were staggering. For the first time in galactic history, a species with such limited resources had shown the ability to outthink and outfight one of the oldest and most powerful empires known to the stars. And as word spread of the humans' unexpected victory, the galactic powers began to take notice. The Vorelians were humiliated. They had never faced a challenge like this before. They were a species accustomed to crushing weaker opponents without hesitation, but the humans had shattered that certainty, and now they were forced to question everything they had believed about their place in the galaxy. In the aftermath of the battle, the Vorelian Empire was thrown into disarray. The once proud fleet had been decimated, and their commanders reeled from the shock of defeat. They could not understand how a species as young and primitive as humanity had managed to best them. But the humans were not content to rest on their laurels. They had tasted victory, but they knew that the galaxy was a far more dangerous place than they had realized. Their victory over the Vorelians had been hard won, but it was only the beginning. Humans were driven by an insatiable curiosity and an undeniable need to secure their future. In the stars, they began to explore with a renewed sense of urgency and ambition. Every corner of space was a potential new home, every unexplored system a new opportunity to expand their reach. As the humans began to spread out across the galaxy, they encountered more and more species who had never seen anything like them. The older and more established species reacted with a mixture of fear and confusion. Some underestimated the humans as nothing more than a passing phase. Others saw them as a threat to their own dominance. But none could deny the human presence was growing stronger by the day. The human ships were still crude compared to the vast fleets of the ancient empires, but their numbers were increasing rapidly. They built quickly and efficiently. Their colonies sprang up on distant planets. Their mining operations expanded, and their technology improved at an exponential rate. No one had ever seen a species progress so rapidly in such a short time. The galaxy was used to seeing civilizations rise and fall slowly over millennia, but humanity moved with a speed that left the other species scrambling to keep up. What truly set the humans apart from the other species, however, was their ability to adapt under pressure. They were not bound by centuries of tradition or the heavy expectations of an ancient history. They had no old wars to avenge, no sacred codes to adhere to. They were free to learn from their mistakes and push forward without hesitation. They took the best aspects of each culture they encountered and combined them into something new and uniquely human. The other species began to realize with increasing dread that the humans were not just another race to be absorbed into the galactic fold. They were something entirely new, something dangerous, a species that had no respect for old boundaries and no fear of new challenges. Their relentless drive to survive and thrive was unmatched, and it quickly became clear that their presence in the galaxy would not be a fleeting one. Yet the humans remained unaware of the fear they were instilling across the galaxy. They were simply focused on the next step, the next challenge, the next frontier, and in doing so they had become the galaxy's most dangerous unknown, the predators no one had expected, and the empire builders no one had predicted. As the humans continued to spread across the galaxy, their influence began to extend into sectors previously dominated by ancient and powerful species. The very species that had once considered themselves untouchable began to feel the pressure of humanity's relentless advance, and it was during this period that the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The once harmonious assembly of species was now fraught with tension as representatives debated what to do about the humans. Some argued for diplomacy, others suggested economic sanctions, while a growing faction called for direct military intervention against the humans, fearing that if left unchecked, they would soon dominate the galaxy in a matter of mere decades. But as the debate raged, a quiet realization began to dawn on many. The humans were not like other species. They did not respond to threats in the way that most did. Diplomacy would not work with them. Neither would fear tactics, for humans only seemed to grow stronger when they were challenged. The Council's hesitance was rooted in a simple truth: the humans were not easily defeated by conventional means. They fought with a desperation that other species could not understand. They fought because they had to, and that was a terrifying thought. The galaxy had never seen a species that was so willing to endure hardship and loss without breaking their resolve. So instead of banding together to stop the humans, they found themselves questioning their own survival strategies. Across the stars, the humans were beginning to make their presence felt in ways that were impossible to ignore. They were settling on planets that had been considered uninhabitable by most other species, transforming barren worlds into thriving colonies using technology that no one else had thought to develop. They were mining resources from asteroids and distant moons using techniques that turned entire planets into production hubs, and their warships, while still crude compared to the ancient fleets, were evolving at a staggering pace. The humans were innovating faster than anyone could keep up. But it wasn't just their technology that set them apart. It was their social structure, their unity, their ability to rally together in the face of adversity. Other species were built on hierarchy and tradition, but humans were defined by their adaptability. They did not rely on ancient codes or rigid leadership structures. They found ways to cooperate across cultures, across histories, and it was this flexibility that allowed them to thrive. One of the most remarkable developments came when the humans discovered how to manipulate energy in ways that no one had anticipated. Their scientists created reactors that could power entire fleets with little more than a fraction of the resources that traditional power sources required, and this leap forward sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. When the humans began to share their technology with their allies, the balance of power began to shift irrevocably. It was during this period that the humans made contact with a previously isolated race known as the Turvath, an insectoid species with a hive mind that had long stayed out of galactic affairs, preferring their quiet existence deep in the outer rim. The Turvath had no interest in galactic politics, and they had no desire for expansion or conquest. But when they encountered the humans, they recognized a shared trait between them: a relentless drive to survive and evolve. The Turvath saw in humans something familiar, something they had long kept hidden within themselves: the same hunger for growth and the same ambition to reach beyond their natural limits. And so the Turvath made a choice, one that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. They chose to ally with the humans, the first time in history that such an ancient and powerful species had chosen to work alongside a race so young and untested. The alliance was a game changer. The Turvath provided the humans with knowledge of their advanced bioengineering and hive systems, while the humans shared their technology and innovative thinking. The two species worked together to create hybrid systems that blended human ingenuity with Turvath efficiency, and soon the galaxy saw the rise of a new hybrid fleet, a fleet that was not only technologically advanced, but biologically enhanced and terrifyingly efficient. The humans had done the impossible. They had formed an alliance with a species that no one had ever dared to approach, and together they were building something that could rival the greatest empires of the galaxy. This alliance was the final confirmation to the rest of the galaxy that humanity was no longer just a force to be reckoned with. They were a force that could reshape the very fabric of galactic power. With the Turvath alliance in place, humanity's rise to power was no longer a distant possibility. It was an inevitable reality. The newly formed hybrid fleet was a marvel of design and function, a blend of human creativity and Turvath biological precision that outstripped anything the galaxy had seen before. Each ship, each weapon, each piece of technology was a testament to the terrifying potential of human ingenuity when paired with an advanced species willing to share its knowledge. And yet, even as humanity's influence grew, there were those who still believed they could stop it. The Galactic Council, once fractured by indecision, now faced an existential crisis. Factions within the Council that had once advocated for peaceful coexistence now called for an aggressive campaign to curtail humanity's growth. The Vorelian defeat had been one thing, but the alliance with the Turvath was a game changer. It was no longer about a single species. It was about a new force that threatened to unbalance the entire galaxy. Diplomacy, it seemed, was no longer an option. The Council's call to arms was swift. They would form a united front, pooling their military resources to stop the humans before their reach expanded any further. The plan was bold, perhaps too bold, but it was all they had. A coalition fleet, one of the largest ever assembled in galactic history, would converge on the human colonies and crush the uprising before it could spread. The Council was certain that the humans, despite their recent successes, would not stand a chance against such overwhelming power. But what the Council underestimated was the very essence of humanity, their relentless drive to survive. Humans had always been a species that had fought not just to win, but to ensure that no force could ever stop them. The battle for survival had shaped their civilization, and now that same instinct was guiding them as they prepared for the coming storm. The humans were not naive. They knew the coalition fleet was coming, and they knew they were vastly outnumbered. But instead of cowering in fear, they did what they had always done, adapted. They strengthened their defenses, upgraded their ships, and prepared their people for the worst. But more importantly, they learned the art of asymmetrical warfare. They knew they could not match the coalition's numbers or sheer firepower head-on. Instead, they would strike where the enemy was weakest, where the Council's unity was fractured, and where its most powerful members had their own hidden agendas. As the coalition fleet began its march toward the human colonies, humanity's forces moved in the shadows, using their intimate knowledge of the galaxy's uncharted regions and the newly acquired Turvath bioengineered systems to outmaneuver their enemies. In an audacious move, the humans launched a preemptive strike against key Council strongholds, disrupting supply lines and targeting vulnerable communication hubs. With their hybrid fleet, they struck with surgical precision, causing chaos within the coalition's ranks. But even this was not enough to stop the juggernaut of the Galactic Council. The battle for the humans' survival was far from over. In a series of harrowing clashes, the humans demonstrated a devastating new weapon, one that combined the Turvath's genetic manipulation with human technological advancement. It was not just a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon that could turn the tide of the war itself. The humans had found a way to harness the power of their greatest advantage, resilience, and turn it into a force that could destroy entire fleets with a single strike. The Coalition fleet was unprepared for this new technology, and for the first time, they found themselves on the back foot. Humanity's resolve had pushed them to the edge of the galaxy's greatest powers, and they had not only survived, they were winning. The once invincible forces of the Galactic Council, faced with human ingenuity, resilience, and their newfound alliance with the Turvath, were beginning to fracture. In a matter of months, the Council's carefully constructed alliances began to unravel. Each defeat at the hands of the humans planted seeds of doubt and fear within the Coalition. The Vorelians, already humiliated, were the first to fall back, unable to withstand the combined might of the human Turvath forces. Soon, other species followed, realizing that resistance to the humans was no longer just futile. It was a matter of survival. The galaxy, it seemed, was being reshaped by the unrelenting drive of humanity, and with each passing day, the Coalition's resolve weakened. The humans had become not just a threat, but a new order, a deadly new power that no one could ignore. The turning point had come, and with it, the galaxy's old order began to crumble. The once mighty Galactic Council, shaken by repeated losses and internal strife, struggled to maintain any semblance of unity in the face of humanity's relentless advance. The human forces, bolstered by their alliance with the Turvath and driven by an insatiable hunger for survival, had already broken the Council's hold on vast swaths of the galaxy. The once unchallenged power of the Council was now reduced to a fractured shell of its former self, divided by fear, mistrust, and betrayal. As the humans pressed forward, their war machine gained momentum. Their colonies, once tiny outposts scattered across distant worlds, had grown into thriving hubs of industry and innovation. Their hybrid fleet, which had once been a simple partnership between two species, had become an unstoppable force, blending Turvath bioengineering with human creativity and tactical brilliance. The two species had forged a bond unlike any other, and now that bond was terrifyingly effective. The hybrid fleet moved with a terrifying synchronicity, coordinated and precise, outmaneuvering their enemies with a ruthlessness that stunned even the most battle-hardened commanders. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as human ships, once considered primitive, now outclassed the fleets of the ancient empires. Where once the humans had fought only to survive, they now fought to dominate. They had learned from every victory, every defeat, and adapted in ways that no other species could match. Their strategies, unpredictable and daring, left the rest of the galaxy scrambling to catch up. The human military was no longer just a collection of ships. It was a living, breathing organism capable of moving with terrifying efficiency across the stars. And yet, despite their growing power, the humans did not seek to conquer in the traditional sense. Unlike the empire-building species of the past, humanity's strategy was not about assimilation or subjugation. They had no interest in ruling the galaxy in the way the Vorelians or the Jarkan had. Instead, they sought something far more dangerous: freedom and autonomy. The humans had no desire to be ruled by anyone or anything. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were revolutionaries, intent on remaking the galaxy on their own terms. This drive for independence, coupled with their unmatched adaptability, made them the ultimate wild card in galactic politics. The Council, long used to controlling the fates of lesser species, found themselves unable to predict humanity's next move. When they tried to negotiate, humanity ignored them. When they attempted to engage in diplomacy, the humans simply expanded further, taking what they needed without waiting for permission. The galaxy's great powers could not fathom how a species so young, so raw, could defy their centuries-old systems and emerge victorious again and again. The Council's desperate attempts to regroup were futile. Every measure they took to regain control seemed to push humanity even further into the galaxy. But perhaps the most dangerous aspect of humanity's rise was their unwavering belief in their own destiny. The humans did not see themselves as outsiders or interlopers in the galaxy. They believed, with a passion that bordered on fanaticism, that they had a right to claim their place in the stars. And that belief, that unshakable faith in their future, was something the other species could not understand. By now, humanity's influence had spread across dozens of star systems. Their colonies, now self-sustaining and rich with resources, had become strongholds that the Galactic Council could no longer ignore. The humans were no longer a mere nuisance to be dealt with. They were a new power that could not be dismissed. The very fabric of the galaxy had been torn asunder, and humanity, with its tenacity and defiance, had woven itself into the center of that new reality. It was not just the Council's fleets that had faltered in the face of humanity's advance. The political systems of other species, once confident in their superiority, were now in disarray. Old alliances dissolved, and new ones formed in the face of the rising human threat. The once dominant empires of the galaxy were forced to confront the reality that humanity was no longer an insignificant player. It was the new force to be reckoned with. The galaxy, it seemed, had reached a crossroads. And at that crossroads stood humanity, the most deadly and unpredictable species the galaxy had ever known. As humanity's grip on the galaxy tightened, the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. The galaxy's ancient empires, their once unshakable dominion now fractured, were forced to confront a truth they had long feared but never fully acknowledged. The humans were not a passing threat. They were the future. Species that had once viewed the human race as a curiosity or a fleeting danger were now forced to reckon with their unyielding drive to survive and expand. No longer content with just defending their territory, humanity now sought to redefine the very structure of the galaxy. The Galactic Council, once an assembly of the most powerful beings in existence, had been rendered powerless. Attempts to assemble a counteroffensive were met with failure at every turn. The coalition fleets that had once been their greatest strength now found themselves fighting on multiple fronts, unable to coordinate effectively in the face of humanity's chaotic brilliance. The human Turvath hybrid fleet had become an unstoppable force, constantly evolving and adapting to every new challenge. The once proud fleets of the Council were crushed under the weight of human innovation and resilience. But humanity's power was not just military. It was ideological. The humans were spreading a new way of thinking, one that resonated with many of the galaxy's lesser-known species. Where once the powerful had enforced their rule through fear and dominance, humanity was offering something different: freedom. Humanity's rise was not marked by the subjugation of others, but by their ability to offer autonomy and self-determination to those who were tired of centuries of oppression. Their colonies were thriving, self-governed systems where resources were shared and citizens had a voice in their future. It was a stark contrast to the autocratic, top-down structures of the ancient species. Many species, particularly those on the fringes of galactic society, saw in humanity a glimmer of hope. They had been oppressed by the Council for eons, their voices drowned out by the overwhelming power of the ruling species. Now, with humanity's success and their promise of a new order, these lesser species were beginning to align themselves with the humans. What started as a few alliances quickly became a sprawling network of systems, all eager to join the growing human-led movement. It was a political revolution that no one had seen coming, a challenge to the very foundation of galactic governance. In the heart of the Galactic Council, panic began to spread. The Council's leaders, once secure in their positions of power, now saw their rule slipping away. The humans, with their ever-growing alliances and their revolutionary ideals, had become a political force as much as a military one. No longer were they just a threat to be crushed in battle. They were now the galvanizing force of a new galaxy, one where the old systems of oppression were crumbling in the face of a rising tide of self-determination. The Council's desperation reached a boiling point. In a last-ditch effort to stop the human tide, they called upon their most powerful weapon, the Devourers, a race of bioengineered super-soldiers created by the Jarkan, one of the oldest and most brutal species in the galaxy. These soldiers were designed to annihilate entire populations and obliterate entire planets. The Jarkan had kept them in reserve, But now, with their empire on the brink of collapse, they were deployed in a final act of desperation. The Devourers were a nightmare made real, a terrifying force that had destroyed countless civilizations before. They were unleashed on human colonies, sent to crush the heart of humanity's expansion, and to send a message to the galaxy. No one, not even the humans, could stand against the combined might of the ancient empires. But the humans, as always, did not cower. Instead, they adapted. They understood the threat, and they were ready. The Devourers, despite their immense strength, were not invincible. Humanity had learned from every encounter, every battle, and now they were fighting with everything they had to protect their new way of life. The human Turvath hybrid fleet clashed with the Jarkin's Devourers in a series of brutal, explosive confrontations, each one pushing humanity's limits. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Humanity, against all odds, not only withstood the onslaught, but began to turn the tide. The Devourers, though powerful, were not prepared for the ferocity and unpredictability of human strategy. Time and time again, humanity found ways to exploit their weaknesses, to outmaneuver their overwhelming power. The humans, the very species that had once been seen as a mere nuisance, had become the unrelenting force that could not be stopped. In the aftermath of the conflict, the galaxy was left reeling. The Devourers had been defeated, their creators humiliated. The Galactic Council, once a beacon of power, had been reduced to a fractured, powerless entity. Humanity had not just survived, they had proven that their place in the stars was secure. The galaxy now had a new order, one that was not governed by fear or ancient traditions, but by the indomitable will of a species that refused to be denied. And in that new order, humanity stood at the forefront, not as conquerors, but as the architects of a future they had fought to create. The galaxy had changed. The old empires, their power and influence now diminished, could only watch as humanity redefined what it meant to thrive in the stars. No longer were they the outsiders or the underdogs. The humans had ascended beyond the expectations of the galaxy's ancient civilizations, and they were not content to merely exist. They were here to reshape the future. Their relentless pursuit of survival, innovation, and freedom had transformed them from an unknown species into the dominant force in the galaxy. With the defeat of the Devourers and the collapse of the Galactic Council, humanity began to solidify its position as the new center of power. The once fractured coalition of lesser species who had rallied to humanity's cause now formed a sprawling network of independent worlds, all unified under the banner of human-led governance. What had begun as a revolution had evolved into an empire, but not in the traditional sense. Humanity's empire was not built on subjugation and oppression. It was an empire of choice, where each species, each world, had the right to determine its own future. The humans did not seek to conquer or dominate. They sought to create a galaxy where all sentient beings could rise to their fullest potential. The new order was a stark contrast to the ancient systems that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. The old empires had been built on rigid hierarchies, oppressive control, and a belief in the superiority of one species over all others. Humanity's empire was one of adaptability, collaboration, and mutual respect. Under human leadership, the galaxy began to heal from centuries of conflict, exploitation, and inequality. No longer were the weak crushed beneath the boots of the powerful. The humans had created a space where even the smallest species had a voice, where alliances were forged not through fear, but through shared purpose. As humanity's influence spread, the other species, once hesitant to trust them, began to see the promise of this new galaxy. The Turvath, once isolated and insular, found themselves not just allies, but integral partners in shaping the future. Their bioengineering prowess, combined with human ingenuity, had led to unprecedented advancements in medicine, agriculture, and even space travel. Together, they had unlocked new technologies and solutions that benefited all who sought to join this new galaxy. Other species, once oppressed or ignored, found themselves flourishing in the wake of humanity's rise. The once crippling divisions between species began to fade as mutual respect and understanding took their place. But even as humanity's empire grew, there were those who could not forget the old ways. The ancient empires who had once ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. The Vorelians, though still licking their wounds, began to stir, realizing that their place in the galaxy was no longer guaranteed. The Jarkin, humiliated by the defeat of the Devours, sought to regain their lost prestige. But humanity had already learned one of the most valuable lessons of survival. The galaxy was constantly evolving, and to stand still was to be left behind. The humans knew that their greatest strength was not just their ability to defeat their enemies. It was their ability to evolve faster than anyone could anticipate. And so, the humans pressed on, not with the hubris of conquerors, but with the resolve of survivors who had faced the galaxy's greatest challenges and emerged victorious. They continued to explore, to innovate, to push the boundaries of what was possible. They reached out to the stars, eager to discover new worlds, new species, and new opportunities. Humanity, once dismissed as a mere blip on the galactic radar, had become the beating heart of a new era. But even as they forged their future, humanity never forgot their origins. They had come from a planet where survival had been a daily struggle. They had fought to rise above the ashes of their past, and they would never allow themselves to forget that fight. Their resolve, their spirit, and their unyielding belief in the power of unity would be the foundation upon which this new galaxy would be built. The galaxy, once ruled by fear and division, had been transformed. It was now a galaxy built on the strength of those who dared to dream, to fight, and to thrive. And at the center of it all stood humanity, the deadly, deadly humans who had changed the stars forever.